Welcome, everyone. The Ballon d'Or ceremony would be held on Monday, and we need to definitely get our predictions in. So, here on the Shaft podcast, on this episode of the Beer Parlor, we are basically going to break down the top nominees for the Ballon d'Or 2024. Maybe we would have some agreements, would have some disagreements on who should rank where, but basically, we are going to pick top six people and then rank them from the sixth to the first. And when we are done, after the ceremony, we can come back and review how accurate our rankings were. Most importantly, on tipping who would win. I know there are popular views out there about like Vinicius Jr. wanting being the favorite, but we'll also have a discussion about who is likely to win versus who deserves to win based on the performances. And if the person who deserves to win does not win, then we know what to do. The agenda must agenda. But Erasmus, the Ballon d'Or, people say it's sport and now it's no more fun anymore. Like, initial thoughts before we go into ranking the players that we have.
Yeah, so good afternoon or good evening, ladies and gentlemen, depending on wherever that you are. I think I'm very much excited about this year's Ballon d'Or. Also because I think it's what makes it stand out is the fact that it's one of the very first after the whole Ronaldo-Messi
era.
So it's the first time that both of them are not featuring heavily or being the top favorites. I think even Ronaldo was not even nominated.
Yeah, it was not in the top 30 list.
Yes, it's not. It was not even in the top 30 list. So it's very interesting for me because it feels like we could get to experience the kind of Ballon d'Or that we had pre the Messi Ronaldo era. But I think it has also generated a lot of different conversations, a lot of different comparisons, and for the first time, we have a larger pool of individuals that we can consider. And for me, the most important thing is that we now have the opportunity to say, do we want the Messi Ronaldo thing again, or we want to view football achievements in a different way? I see it more as making that sort of a big statement. And I think who wins it would eventually decide the direction that football wants to continue to go in. So, yeah, I'm pretty much excited about it.
Who wins it would eventually decide the direction football wants to go. It's pretty interesting because I think one of the concerns about the Ballon d'Or recently is that it's been about goals and attacking prowess and a lot of the time also PR rather than the actual performances of players. And so today we're going to go through top six players who are on the list for the Ballon d'Or, and then we'll try and rank them. We'll go through the names and see who you rank where. So the players we are going to be talking about today is Harry Kane, who had a fantastic season in his first season in the Bundesliga, Lautaro Martinez in the Italian league, and also in the Copa America. You have Dani Carvajal with Real Madrid and also with the Spain national team. You have Jude Bellingham with Real Madrid, and with the England national team, you have Rodri as well with Manchester City and with the Spanish national team. And then you have Vinicius Jr. with Real Madrid and with the Brazilian national team, where he obviously had an injury during the Copa America and so didn't feature heavily. Also to mention, Kane was also heavily involved in England's campaign during the Euros. So these are the players we are going to talk about. And first, I want us to just do a quick discussion to get your views on each of these players. And then at the end of the episode, we'll rank the players from sixth to first based on the picks that we've made. And so first, let's talk about Harry Kane. How do you assess his performances and where do you think he should be ranking in this year's conversation? Because this is a player who scored 52 goals and 14 assists in the year under review. And I think his goal scoring prowess is no doubt, and the impact he had, even though his team didn't win the league in Germany because of Xabi Alonso's unbeaten run to steal the trophy from them. But you look at the performances, what do you think about his placement in this year's Ballon d'Or discussion?
I must be very honest. When you started reading the list, I was waiting to hear the name, but it never came. I was waiting to hear you mention Anthony.
Erasmus, there are some things we do on this podcast that's not nice. We've roasted Anthony on almost every single episode since his signing, because at some point I even have to do a compilation of our Anthony roasts.
Yeah. Someone,
You know,
someone
this weekend.
yesterday. So
Yeah,
yesterday, United played Fenerbahce,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and but before that, on Tuesday, I think it was Real Madrid played
Vinny
Borussia
Jr.
Dortmund,
scored a hat trick.
and Vinicius Jr scored a hat trick. And then
Yeah,
on Wednesday,
Wednesday
Rafinha played
Rafinha scored a hat trick.
against Bayern Munich, scored a hat trick. So I had my money on Anthony scoring a hat trick against Fenerbahce. He came in and he pulled a muscle, and that
He
was it.
was subbed on and subbed off. That's his
Yeah,
achievement.
maybe it
The
was.
only player to be subbed on and subbed off in the same match over the weekend. Charlie, massive respect, man.
No, but moving on to your question,
Yeah,
I think for me, like the Ballon d'Or discussion has always been about what the story is or the narrative is.
yeah,
I think over the last couple of years, there's been so much focus on goals, and that has been what has driven the story. But a lot of times, also, there are certain things that people must see. If you would be the best player in the world, then you need to be influencing your team in a way that is phenomenal, in a way that is sort of getting them over the line. I
yeah,
think it's very unique in a way, and I think it's sort of a strange thing for a team sport to have an individual award that is so coveted. So
yeah,
it's kind of almost like an irony, giving an individual award to within a team sport is always going to engineer some of these discussions. But I think
yeah,
when you think of the sports and you're a sports fan and you want to have conversations, things like that, you really want to agree that this guy was the best. You really want him to be flawless. You really want to put them in the godlike position and talk about the things that they did and sort of like the numbers that they've been able to put out and how they were able to influence their team. But more
yeah,
often than not, realize that it's also about how you make people feel. People, you want to tune in, and then I remember the days of Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi. You
yeah.
tune in, and this guy scored four, this guy also scored four, and that was what
Oh,
made it very exciting.
yeah,
So, tying that back to Harry Kane, I think he puts out a lot of performances, but the very first thing is his move away from the English Premier League, and I nearly said
yeah.
English. The English Premier League. I
You
nearly.
roasted Anthony and migrated back to Kumasi. Okay.
So, he moved away from the English Premier League, which I think
Yeah,
took up a lot of spotlights. To be fair, the German league got more spotlights than
because of
we've
it.
traditionally seen, especially because Kane
Yeah,
moved in there, which I think was good for the league. But they were dominated by a certain Bayer Leverkusen. So no
yeah,
matter what you think of Kane's stats, it just really feels like he couldn't pull through. And given the story of Bayer Leverkusen, who also were a team that was almost in relegation a couple of seasons ago,
yeah,
it just felt like it was way more exciting than the story of a 30-year-old who had quote unquote
yeah,
wasted most of his life in a club that didn't give him anything, and he moved here. Yeah, well, we always knew he could do it. The German league is far easier than the Premier League, which obviously is not true. But I
yeah. But
like
the narratives.
yes, the narratives, like I gave the context in the beginning, the
Yeah,
narratives just don't seem to be that he has moved them over. Lastly, you also want to look at his contributions within the tournament Euros. And even
yeah,
though the stat says that he was a joint Golden Boot winner, I'll be frank, I didn't know this till you put this up. So
yeah,
it just goes to say that even though he has done phenomenal things, they've been usual uh, phenomenal hurricane things, and therefore they
yeah,
seem to go under the radar. Plus, he's not putting some of the performances to be able to show these things. Like within the England squad, there were several times where he wasn't playing well. It turns out that
yeah,
he was carrying he was playing, but all of these things did not help his shout. And it's really sad because he was one of those players that I was hoping that after Messi and Ronaldo move on, he would also start getting some of these awards.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, to be very honest, when it comes to Harry Kane, it's so difficult to talk about him and his placements within this list because it's more like if you isolate him from everything else, it seems like an outstandingly phenomenal performance. If you put him in context, it all of a sudden drops to about halfway the kind of ratings that you give it. And like you said, this is somebody who won no silverware with a season with Bayern Munich, and Bayern as a team was always expected to win something, right? So if with all these outstanding performances you still don't get to win, and this is also the season where you get most light on the in recent years, most light on the German Bundesliga, but then Xavi Alonso and his three horsemen come and steal the spotlight and just run the show from start to finish. The noise around Bayern Munich was much more negative than
Yeah,
positive throughout the season. And so he swallowed up a lot of the favor that Kane could have gotten within the period. And
exactly.
also, I think when it came to tough games, he didn't show up and they lost most of the time. I mean, maybe he show up one or two times, but to make the kind of impact that you're expecting, for instance, for Ronaldo to score a hat trick to rescue a Champions League game that was slipping away, right? Those kind of turn ups for Messi to just do the absolutely phenomenal thing to turn tides around. You weren't seeing that from Harry Kane when the team was down. And so what that meant was that he then had to sync with the team, even if he had sparks of moments here and there. And so it is true. I think he deserves a shout for that individual performance, joint Golden Boot winner at the Euros, 52 goals and 14 assists. Outstanding performance. But I still think that there was a lot more that was lacking with him as a person in terms of his evaluation compared to the other players. The next person I want us to go to would be Carvajal, Dani Carvajal from Real Madrid. Now, Dani Carvajal, both from Real Madrid and the Spanish national team, he, to be very honest, he's one of the few players who is massively underrated but heavily profiled, right? And
Yeah.
so let me put up his uh, statistics so that we can be able to evaluate properly what Dani Carvajal brought to the table during the season. Because you look at his stats, and this is somebody who won the Champions League, he won the La Liga, he also went ahead to win the Euros with Spain. And similar to Lautaro Martinez, who won his domestic league and went ahead to win the international league as well, they are the only two players on this list who did both. I think Rodri also falls within that category, winning the Premier League and then going ahead to win the Euros. They are the only three players who did both. But I don't see Carvajal getting the massive shouts like you'd get even Rodri getting, or like you'd even get Vinicius Jr. or Bellingham getting. He doesn't seem to come into people's minds at all. But this is somebody who had 7 goals, 8 assists as a defender, 21 clean sheets within the season under review. And there's massive performances that influence the outcomes for his teams, right? And he turned up massively, and he's a leader within the dressing room in all of these situations. Why do you think he's not getting the shout he deserves? Is it simply because he's a defender and he's not flowery? Or there is much more to Ballon d'Or that he's lacking within this context?
No, I don't think so. I think the last defender to win the Ballon d'Or was Fabio Cannavaro in
Yeah,
2006. And in that year, when you think about when you think about individual players in this instance who are trying their best to win the Ballon d'Or, they can only do what they have to do. Like
yeah,
you can't expect Dani Carvajal to go and be scoring
exactly.
50 or things like that. So you need to think about him in context of his position and his contribution and impact within the team. Was he one of the key players? Was he their best defender? It's a bit hard to tell because Real Madrid, even though they had a stellar season, it was very funny. Like they had a stellar season, but it just went under the radar.
The radar,
Mostly
yeah.
because they
It's
began
always
the
the thing with Real Madrid, really.
yeah, it just saw like okay, it was normal, so no one even made. Because when City won the treble, we all saw how they behaved.
Yeah.
Um, but when Real Madrid did it, everyone just like glossed
Is
over
that
it.
a sign of we've won so much, so now it doesn't make the news? And does that
Yeah,
undermine the win?
yeah, I don't think it should, and I think people still give them plaudits. But I think compared to how maybe other clubs and other people treat it, it's a bit different. But not to miss the point here. I think what Carvajal did, especially at the beginning of the season, because I think there were points at which he was now just coming back from injury within the
Yeah,
previous season, and him having to step in within the defense at certain points. I think he was even playing as
center
a
back.
center in
Yeah,
order to assist with the defense. So if half of Real Madrid's defense fell within the
yeah,
season, but were able to keep 21 clean sheets with Caballero in the lineup, it does mean that someone was doing a fantastic job, and
yeah,
that person most likely was a defender. But given that, you could see also that what counts for Real Madrid most of the time in some of these big games is the feeling that they've been there before. That's
yeah,
what makes Real Madrid very different from other clubs. They wouldn't get nervous under that
yeah,
specific situation. And I think they have a brilliant way of doing it. And Dani Carvajal is a big part of that, because
yeah,
consistently they have players who are just willing to be within the team and sacrifice themselves. And
yeah,
you look at Dani Carvajal, and I think he has over 25 trophies. I think he's,
yeah.
apart from Dani
A very
Alves,
well decorated player.
yeah, apart from Messi, no one has won more trophies than him. And he's in the
Yeah,
dressing room. So a part of what makes Real Madrid, and a part of what made them won last season, especially against all odds, was the feeling
yeah.
that they'd been there before.
You look
And
at that
the
game and you think they shouldn't have gone out of the Etihad with a
exactly,
point. They shouldn't have made it out of there alive.
yes, exactly. But they end up coming out, and I think
Yeah,
it's apart from the big performances, obviously from players like Vinicius and Bellingham, whom we'll talk about. It was also these guys who were there to tell them that you need to believe in yourself, who were there to
yeah,
push the team on, who were there to show supreme confidence. Because there were some plays where Cabral was making certain runs, tracking back. I remember the game against City, the way he
yeah,
pocketed Grealish. Some of these things, when other players are seeing it, they can be able to find that confidence. So for
yeah,
me, I think if he wins it, it will be one of those stories that will be nice for football, to be able to
yeah.
recognize people who just have been there and done the work and
Unsung
have not cared
heroes.
about the spotlight
Yeah,
and that much. But I think that if we are looking at raw stats, for example, for some people, there's a school of thought that just believes that Ballon d'Or needs to be who has won the most important trophies. Then I think that Caballero definitely deserves it, and there shouldn't be a reason to
yeah.
overlook him.
I mean, a lot of the time people credit attacking players and goal scorers. But I've always said that if attackers don't score and defenders defend well, you get a draw. If attackers don't score and defenders are poor, you lose. If attackers score and defenders are poor, you don't win either way. And so it's like in every single situation where a team performance is required, you need the defense to be solid. And people will say again, I'm shading Manchester United for no reason, but it's clear with their performances, the definition of a good defense and how valuable it is to getting results comes in when your attackers start scoring and then the defense is porous and keeps conceding. And I think for a team like Real Madrid, given all their defensive injuries last season, to go ahead and keep a significant number of clean sheets, to win the Champions League, to go to City and defend as deep as they did and get a result. It tells you that this is a team that had a significant improvement and enforcement in their defense. And so for Carvajal's role in it, and also just for the trophies that he's won, I think he definitely deserves a shout. I'm interested to see where he eventually ranks in the top 10. And I think that would be a significant way to
I
measure
think it's
also.
top.
Yeah,
I think it will be atrocious
yeah,
not to put him like
in the top three.
not to put him in the top three. I think it will be atrocious not to put him in the top three. Like if
Yeah,
I see, for example, Lautaro Martinez there instead of him, maybe
Yeah.
I can understand. But if not, and I see another Bellingham shout or anything of that sort, then I'll just know it's the same thing they want to do over and over again.
Already leaking your thoughts on some of the players, but yeah, that's an interesting one on Dani Carvajal, and let's talk a bit more about uh, Jude Bellingham, because I think for Jude Bellingham, his start to life in Madrid is one that people didn't see coming, and I think you said something around Lamine Yamal's age affecting the way in which people view his performances and the ratings that people give him. I think for Jude Bellingham, there is a degree of the media praise that he gets that's purely because of his age, and purely also because it's around someone who is that young going into the Spanish La Liga in Real Madrid, putting on the Zinedine Zidane's famous number 5 legendary shirt, setting the tone and a celebration for himself, coming up with clutch goals in tough games that Real Madrid has had, and eventually having a huge impact on the outcome of their season, right? And you look at that, and it's like, because this a player who was playing as mainly as a false nine or as a 9.5 or as a 10. Only God will know the name of that position Ancelotti played him for the entirety of last season. But this is a player who came up with 27 goals and 17 assists, won the Champions League, won La Liga, the and other domestic titles, and then went to the Euros final. And I think the England team together didn't play well, but Bellingham was a key part in terms of some of key assists he made and some of the defensive performances that he put in. And people make the claim that for him to go into the mere fact that he went into Real Madrid and cemented his status in the team is one that is legendary. And if you look at his trajectory throughout his childhood and the kind of teams that he's played, he's gotten leadership recognition very, very early on in his career. How do you assess Bellingham's placement in this Ballon d'Or discussion?
So Bellingham is a curious case because it fits the description I was saying that people usually have to the Ballon d'Or. It's the moments
Yeah.
and how you make us feel.
Yeah.
He scored a lot of goals. He did score a lot of goals. But if you look at 27 goals, 17 assists, historically, looking at the players who have won the Ballon d'Or, especially Ronaldo-Messi era, this
Yeah.
it was chicken change. So it concedes to the point that one, it has been about what the narrative has been around how he entered into the club, around his age, like you said, and a number of things. But then also moments, how he has made us feel.
The story.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you only look at the first half of 2024, then probably he was. No, if you look at the first part of the season and the review, was probably like the best player in the world. But and people say, well, he's petered out and he's not doing those big things, etc. I think even Ancelotti admitted to this and said, no, I think the surprising thing was last season where he scored that many. This season, he's actually performing way better. He's winning more balls. He's running more. Like he's doing a lot of things better. Which
he's playing more as a midfielder now than as an attacking forward.
Exactly. And that's what we knew him for, and that's what we lauded him for. We just didn't know he had this part of his game to it. And I think if you look at his development, he's going to grow to get better at both ends of the pitch. And I think just like Ronaldo made a decision one day to say, look, I'm going to score goals and this is what I'm going to do. Jude Bellingham has an opportunity to do that. I just don't think the opportunity will come at Real Madrid. Because Real Madrid would always want to trust the kind of attackers that they have in signing Mbappe, Vinicius Jr, and they want to sign less attackers. So Bellingham perhaps has to refine his craft to just get better at scoring goals. Because if you
Yeah.
play as a false nine, you score 27 goals for in a season, it is immense. It is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we like, if you want to be within that conversation, especially as an attacker, you need to be doing more. Which means that the context around him being a midfielder or someone who plays in deep, who was taking this kind of position, also does influence or make the case for him a bit. I think
Yeah.
he's probably the best young player in the world at the moment. I just
Yeah.
don't think that he has a Ballon d'Or yet. Like,
You've
for
mentioned something I
example,
want to ask about. You mentioned you think he's probably the best young player in the world at the moment. Under the
yes.
year under review, would you pick Bellingham over Palmer?
Yes,
'Cause-
yes. I think in terms of individual performances, Palmer
yeah,
has pulled some crazy things, but I'll be a
yeah,
victim of my own bias if I rely on just those things to now say he's been a better player. Obviously, Jude Bellingham is playing within a better team, which means that his influence is able to translate into way more success and achievements on the pitch.
yeah.
Like, I
Okay,
still love Palmer as a player over Jude Bellingham, but
I get
like,
you.
it's not the same way. It's not Palmer's fault he's playing in Chelsea. It's also not Jude's fault that he's playing
Bellingham's
in Liverpool.
fault. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, for Jude, like you say, it's a story. It's like a story. It's like an unbelievable script that you see unfold in front of you, and you're like, "Oh my god, this one has to be one of the most iconic stories." And I think if England had won the Euros, it would have cemented that
oh,
story, regardless of how poor their Euros run. People would purport it wasn't exciting, whatever it was. If England had won the Euros, Jude
and do you
Bellingham's
know what?
story would
Do
have
you know what?
cemented itself. Yeah,
I mean, Carvajal did, but we are not saying it's
yeah,
cement.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's because we all know that a huge part of the rise or his name entry into these kind of conversations has been a PR machine behind him. And
yeah,
I know usually PR machine is said to be like some conspiracy
mhm,
theory thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
It is real.
it is
It's
real.
real.
Like,
It's
and
real. Like,
and genuinely, I don't think it's bad, right? If like Ronaldo had a PR machine, Messi had a PR
yes,
machine. These
yes,
guys lived up to the standards the machine set for them, and so you wouldn't say the PR is bad. The PR is bad when the PR is disconnected from the reality. and,
yeah,
and that's usually the problem. But I think for the year under review, when it started, Bellingham was worth every bit of the PR. But
yeah,
I also think that it set certain expectations for everyone as it went along. It was like, now we've come to know you for this. So that's what we are looking for from you. And if you don't give us that, we think you've
yeah,
performed poorly. But if Bellingham was playing some of the games he played in the latter days of the season at Dortmund, we would start assessing those games and say he did well because the metrics we were judging him on then was about his interceptions, was about his duels, was about his runs and how much ground he covered, and not goals and assists because he was playing as a midfielder who was deep line and was supposed to be shielding the defense and be much more proactive in terms of distributing balls. But once we came to know him for prolific goal scoring, for scoring clutch goals, and for giving
yeah.
plenty assists. If he goes back to that style of play, which clearly Ancelotti says during the latter stages of the season, those are some of the instructions he was getting in specific games. Everybody goes like, no go for Bellingham. That's a wrong start.
No, no, no. Which goes to confirm what we were saying, right? Like, you think Bellingham is impressive if you still think of him as a central midfielder who is
Yeah,
bombing for it to
yeah,
lose
yeah.
and goals. But when
If
you
you think
think
he's
of
an
him as a,
attacking midfielder, no.
then it just becomes like, okay. So I think those are the things that he's had to contend with. And of course, like, I'm not against PR, but players
Where do you
do.
think
Players
he
have
ranks?
PR events, players
Would
pay
you
them,
rank
players.
him above Dani Carvajal? If you
No,
were to make your Ballon d'Or list, you not rank Bellingham above
no,
Dani
no, I'm
Carvajal.
not ranking Dani Carvajal.
Wow, interesting. Okay, let's move on to the next person on the list, who is Rodri. Let's talk about Rodri, then we'll move on to Lautaro Martinez, and then come to Vinicius Jr. So Rodri's case, people have made a shout for Rodri for a very long time, and people said he's been undermined, he's been underrated, and I felt the year that Manchester City won the treble was the best year to make a case for Rodri to win the Ballon d'Or because he was the one who scored the winning goal in the Champions League final. He had been present for every single game Manchester City had won, and in anytime he wasn't there, they were much more vulnerable, lost easily, drew games that they were supposed to win, and every time he was present, even in the most difficult games, they find a way to unlock and the doors and then find the keys to success. But this time round, that season is not under review. It's a new season. He has 2 trophies to his name. I think more than 2 actually, because he won the Club World Cup, won the Super Cup, won the Euros 2024, and won the Premier League. So he has 4 trophies to his name. He didn't win the Champions League, and people would say, yeah, maybe that's the off one. But I think if you look at the assessment, first off, maybe people are overly inflating the value that the Champions League or the influence the Champions League should be having on the Ballon d'Or as an assessment. But if you look at the fact that the team that beat Manchester City is the team that went on to win, and the fact that the circumstances under which they were beaten is not like they were abysmally destroyed, it's fair to say that Rodri has had a very impressive season. And people say he should be one of the people winning, even giving more shouts than Dani Carvajal and Jude Bellingham at this point. What do you make of him? Do you think the calls for Rodri to win is coming a bit too late, given that it's a season after they won the treble, or do you think it is perfectly timed?
No, it's a very difficult thing, right? I think like the Ballon d'Or itself is a very very strange award. Like last
Yeah,
season, I think it was Kevin De Bruyne within the top 3, which is like
yeah,
even mental. A player of Kevin De Bruyne's standard, that was the
yeah,
first time that he was climbing the podium, and then
yeah.
people were like, instead of De Bruyne, I should have been what do you
Rodri.
call it, Rodri. So, and I think even Ruben Diaz or so
Yeah,
got a shout. God, it's a very very tricky
good.
conversation because
Yeah,
if you think about even what he's done this season, I think a lot of Manchester City's achievements has just been wiped off because of them winning the treble the previous season and people just expecting them to keep up in that way.
yeah,
They won
yeah,
the Premier League, but they didn't win pretty. They only lost margin. They only won marginally against an Arsenal side that everyone just felt okay. Arsenal should have won that, and City was
yeah,
just lucky and they had that thing. But they put in a lot of work. It's very very hard to keep your players motivated after winning a treble. We all saw Jack Grealish. Um, but at the end of the day, I think he put in a lot of big performances, which put his team over the line. The number of last minute goals that Rodri was scoring
yeah.
to win his
Like as a
game.
defensive midfielder, he has 12 goals and 15 assists.
That was the point I was even going to. Like, if we are impressed with Bellingham playing false nine and attacking mid all season with 21 goals, then a deep line midfielder scoring 12 goals and 15 assists should equally blow our minds, right? But
Yeah,
the fact that also the kind of trophies that he's won, like I know the Club World Cup is not like, and the Super Cup is not seen to be very
yeah. But
important.
he won the Euros.
Yeah, but he
And
won.
he was very integral to the Euros run as
Won the
well.
Euros. He came off at halftime
Yeah,
in the final, so he couldn't sort of like put his mark. And all of these things sort of start chipping away at the credibility that I give to it. Because, like I told you, when it comes to Ballon d'Or, people feel like we are coming to elect our God. So they expect a sense of flawlessness. And that's why when it sort of is a half story and we need to just give it to this person but there are some things which chip away at their achievements. People just say football has fallen off. In the years that
yeah,
Ronaldo and Messi won it, they had to be perfect. They had to be perfect. They
yeah,
had to have done something crazy. It's the story of, is it 91 goals in a calendar year or is it like 84 goals a season? Like, we had to be saying crazy things in comparison. Unfortunately, this season we just have not had the opportunity to do something like that. And I feel like Rodri, even though he should naturally deserve this award, has these small narratives which has been used against him in terms of how they won the Premier League, in terms of how important do people find a Club World Cup and Super Cup, in terms of him missing the Euros final, and people even
Yeah.
questioning if, like, with the Euros, there were more exciting stories around the
Yeah.
when
Lamine Yamal, Nico
the
Williams, Dani
yes,
Olmo.
rather than it's being in the middle of the pack. And it was also the fact that the Spain team, even though he was very, very crucial, even when he left, seemed to be
Yeah, it
carrying on at the
wasn't
same
with.
time.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
it didn't seem like he was moving the needle in terms of.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, when he was there, obviously they look much, much better, much, much secure. But I felt
Yeah.
like that team was a creation of
I
the
think,
coach, and it was the machine that
yeah,
was going
that
to win it.
maybe the better comparison would be to point out that that team didn't fall off to the degree that Manchester City did when Rodri was absent. And so you could
Yes,
still see the Spanish team at its most elite level in delivering. And it was more like, oh, okay, Rodri didn't really impact this team. Like Rodri didn't leave a dent in the team.
yes.
That's a better way to say it.
Yes, yes. So I think those are the narratives that chip. And to be fair, everyone has these things against them. And genuinely, I think if Rodri wins, it's good for football. I want Rodri to win, like, objectively. Even though, like, Vinicius winning is still very nice for me, and I'm already giving away my people over here. But I think if anyone has anything against him, it will be these things which
Yeah.
we have.
Okay. Okay. I mean, for Rodri, I see him as one of the most complete midfielders. Like the way teams struggle to find a defensive midfielder of his quality and his level.
No,
I think
there's no
Arsenal
defensive midfielder like him
like
in the
Arsenal
world.
tried that experiment with signing Thomas Partey because he was with Rodri at Atletico Madrid, and he's been injury prone when he's out of the team. He doesn't seem like somebody they miss. And Rodri has been so integral to the way in which Pep plays, to the way in which Manchester City plays. And even in the Spanish team, we say he didn't leave a dent, but his presence was still felt when he was there. And he was still felt as a leader in the team and with all his experience coming together. So I think it's a really, really difficult thing to look at these petty things as well chipping away. And I think also Rodri is a very by the book footballer that if you are looking at the story around him, Rodri is not the exciting person, right? And you talk about the way in which these stories also influence Ballon d'Or votes, and it's more about who carries this ball that we look at and feel a sense of emotion, feel some
That
goosebumps in our spine, right?
that's a very interesting take, because when recently Rodri came out and then spoke about his time growing up as a
Yeah,
footballer and having to go to university whilst playing
yeah,
for being on loan for Atletico at
yeah,
Villarreal, and him going to summer camp in the US, and people were like, because Rodri speaks fantastic English. Rodri speaks
yeah,
fantastic English, and like
yeah,
Spanish are very good at English, of course. But he's so clear. And I was like, wait, I always just thought he would have a heavy accent. Like, but he says it's because he lived in the USA, which
yeah,
was touching when he spoke about his
yeah,
story with the Spanish national team. That is where I saw the turn towards people linking him
yeah,
to the Ballon,
Rodri, yeah.
was like they were now able to connect the story. And within that story, he said it himself that he's not on social media. He doesn't have social
Yeah, he
media.
doesn't do social media, those
Yeah,
things.
he
Charlie,
lives
if you don't do
alone.
social media, Fabrizio won't post your Instagram status. People will
Yeah,
not see your
people don't
emotions
talk
and how
about
you're
you like
reacting.
that.
Yeah,
But when you think about Vinicius Jr., the boy from the favelas, the boy
yeah.
that had so much talent, they were talking about him, hyping him.
Even throughout the
The boy that
season, the racial experiences on the pitch.
Yes, experiences and some of his performances, let's be very honest, it's been crazy. So
Yeah,
it's like looking at his first season too, how it went, it just feels like we the people who love him, and we know his story and we want to support it. So I think, yeah, it's a very interesting point.
wow. I mean, I'm using Carvajal as the benchmark for Rodri as well, given that they have similar stories from club to country. Would you pick Rodri over Carvajal?
In my
Okay.
mind, it just feels like Rodri is more likely to get it over Carvajal, and that's probably the only reason. I think
Yeah. I also feel Rodri's name carries a presence that Carvajal's name doesn't at this moment.
yes,
And I think if you talk about the PR and the story, Rodri's story, no matter how undersold it is still much more prominent than Carvajal's story in my mind and
of course,
within
I
the
don't know
last.
Carvajal's story.
Yeah, and that's the thing. For somebody who is off social media to have this extent of a grip on the Ballon d'Or discussion, I think being on social media would have been significantly different for him, and the way in which people would have viewed some of the thoughts. But let's go to one person who is a lot more left out for a lot of these discussions, and I think you would enjoy discussing him, Lautaro Martinez. Now, Lautaro Martinez is one that I think people underappreciate in this conversation a lot. Because Lautaro Martinez has 35 goals and 8 assists. He's won the Copa America. He was top scorer. He captained the team most of the time with Messi being injured. And he was a real force in that competition. So this is not just about somebody who won. It's somebody who also had a significant influence in how the team won. You look at, he also won the Supercoppa Italia, he won the Serie A, being top scorer in the Serie A as well. And he was in the last 16 of the Champions League. Now, you look at this performance, and I think it's almost impressive, probably even more impressive than Rodri and Carvajal's in performances. Because maybe the Copa America didn't get as much publicity as the Euros did. Maybe the Serie A doesn't get as much publicity as the La Liga and the what do you call it, the EPL would get. But bro, 35 goals in the year under review, winning these trophies and being a significant influence. I think if Haaland was the one who did this in the EPL, everybody would be screaming Ballon d'Or, right? If Haaland won, went to win an international league like the Euros, won the EPL, was top scorer in both, won another domestic league, let's say the FA Cup, dominated it, even exited in the last 16 of Champions League, everybody would be screaming Haaland's name. Even if he doesn't win, he'll be in the constant conversation.
That
Again, it
being
boils
said,
down to the machinery, right?
yeah, that being said, it's even strange that Haaland's name is not like in consideration, given that like he scored a ridiculous amount of goals last season.
For me, it's not strange because I think Haaland's conversation, if it's that dominant, then you can't rule out Harry Kane as well. And I think Haaland and Harry Kane, probably I would say Harry Kane had a better season than Haaland. I mean, trophy
Oh
wise,
yeah.
sure, Haaland chips, but
No, yeah, I'm just
individual,
talking about the sheer amount of goals because
yeah, yeah,
previously
yeah,
that was really what everyone was looking at. He played for a good team
yeah,
and where he won the Premier League. Was it just the Premier League? He won the Super Cup. He won, and he
yeah,
was like top scorer in the English Premier League in what was just his second season. I think
yeah,
record number of goals scored, record number of hat tricks. The moment
yeah.
and you
The
know,
hat trick that United gave to him. Okay.
yeah, and people just sort of expected after Ronaldo and Messi will be moving to a Haaland Mbappe era. Then all
Yeah,
of a
yeah, yeah.
sudden, like guys pop up.
Like,
Mbappe is not even the best player in Real Madrid right now. I'm sorry.
no. I mean,
I'm sorry.
Jamie Carragher said that Real Madrid thought they were buying the best player in the world, but they didn't know that they already had the best player in the world.
The best player in the
It was,
world.
it was Vinicius Jr.
It's,
Actually.
so it's crazy. Like it's crazy for me. I just thought Mbappe and Haaland would just be in these kind of discussions, but like Mbappe, to be fair, Mbappe has been on the podium I think once or and in the
Yeah,
shout for top 10 like within the last couple of seasons. But I think everyone is sort of waiting for them to compete. But I have a feeling that it might not happen. It might just not
yeah,
happen. Like the story will be this way: Haaland scores a lot of goals, City wins some trophies, then people are like, it's just goals. And then you have all these Vinicius Juniors, the Bellinghams,
yeah,
the Rodris now. So and I'm happy for that. If the focus is not just goals, right? And I think
yeah,
maybe it's testament to the fact that maybe we might be shifting away from these kind of things. But let's see.
yeah, yeah. Okay, I mean, would you, if you had to vote for Lautaro Martinez for the Ballon d'Or, would you be happy doing so if you had a
No,
vote?
no, I will not. I like Lautaro very much. I like
Yeah,
Lautaro. I think he's one of the players who is really being slept on. If
yeah,
you consider the generation of Argentinian strikers, you think of
yeah,
Tevez, you think of Aguero.
yeah,
Like Lautaro is up there. Is up there,
yeah,
and what he did at the Copa America last year was also insane. It's
yeah,
just that where Lautaro plays, he's not playing within the limelight. So you need to put in a lot of effort in order to get people to see what he has done and his achievements. It's funny
yeah,
because the Inter team last season was much better than the one that went to the final. It's a similar
yeah,
case to what we're seeing with regards to
yeah,
Real Madrid, maybe. But we saw them get knocked out by Atletico Madrid, and he even missed a penalty. So
yeah,
if Inter had made it to the finals of the Champions League, then you begin to have some of these conversations. But it's just unfortunate that the Serie A is not one of the leagues which is being put in the eyes of everyone, and he scored an incredible amount of goals over there. And I think the Serie A has become one of the most competitive leagues in the world because you have
yeah,
about 7 or 8
bro,
clubs that can literally win the league
yeah,
every time. So it's just unfortunate in this case that these things, even though they are impressive, the way in which people view the competitiveness of these trophies is not in the same way they view the other ones which other people have. Even though his influence on this perhaps is the biggest, he's the one who's been seen to have a clear influence on
yeah,
his teams that have won these trophies.
yeah. Because for me, it's more like, I mean, for all the shouts that we give Vinicius Jr., and we'll get to him in a few minutes, for all the shout that people give Bellingham and Kane, should should we be undermining and should we be ranking low the achievement of Martinez because by no fault of his he plays in an Italian league that people don't make time to watch, or by no fault of his he won a Copa America that was happening at the same time as the Euros that had way more publicity. I'm not even sure how much of a significance, right, that his inability to create an impression in the minds of people. Like, I know this is counterintuitive because it's more like the Ballon d'Or again, as we've said over and over again, it's really about people having an affinity to that player. And I think if you are thinking about it as a product, I don't think Lautaro Martinez has been sold to the people, not even up until this point, right? And I think maybe that's where his camp would fall short. But finally, let's go to Vinicius Jr. And his ranking or his assessment for this season. Now, again, you look at this, I don't still it still makes zero sense as to why Vinicius Jr. is getting the most shouts to win the Ballon d'Or. Because listen, this is a guy who collectively has both less goals and assists than Bellingham. Bellingham, who we are saying has dropped off. Vinicius Jr. has 26 goals and 12 assists. Bellingham had 27 goals and 17 assists, right? He won the Champions League. Bellingham won the Champions League. He won the La Liga and the Super Copa. What? Bellingham also won those. Bellingham went to the grand finals of the Euros. Brazil was messing up in the Copa America. Vinicius was injured. Even when he was playing, the team
Charlie,
wasn't
let's
really
give the
having.
thing to Rodri. Let's give the thing to Rodri. This is
Bro,
ridiculous.
like I would sleep much better if Lautaro Martinez, Rodri, or Carvajal, any of them win, than Vinicius Jr. winning because it just beats my mind to it, right? But again, it's all about the story. It's all about the PR and the
Yeah,
machinations and the fact that it's a Real Madrid player and they won the Champions League.
I
Bro,
mean it's as subjective as it gets. So this is one of those things that even for us, we are going to find ourselves contradicting ourselves a lot because you continually see it, and the more you talk about it, you are reflecting on it. Like I like Vinicius Jr. I think he's
I
one of the
love him
best
as a
players.
player. Like
I
this
love him.
weekend,
I
his
love his
performance
personality.
with
Look,
his second
this
half hat trick, like
yeah,
outstanding.
yeah, like I tweeted and I was like, people are even before the Mbappe movie. Remember when we talked
Yeah,
about it? I spoke
yeah,
about
yeah, yeah,
Vinicius
yeah,
Jr.
yeah,
and
yeah,
said
yeah.
like Vinicius Jr.
There's
really
no
would
way
be
Mbappe
playing
is
that.
deposing
He's
Vinny
the
Jr. on
best.
that left wing. Yeah,
He's dangerous. Like no one picks the ball and walks through three, four, five players and not be. And that's why when people compare Hazard, for example, to Salah, I get angry
yeah,
because even though Salah scored a lot, like Hazard easily picks up the ball and in a professional game walks through three, four, five players. And Vinicius Jr. does the same thing, and he even puts Hazard
yeah,
out of the team. So
yeah,
I respect him. But when it comes to Ballon d'Or, you find yourself doing two things. You find yourself one having a preference, but also you find yourself looking for who can win to
yeah,
support. So you also don't want to put your money on a horse that's likely not going to pull through. And I feel that is what's happening with Vinicius Jr. He is the one that he's the candidate that we can present. It feels like those KNST elections, right?
yeah.
Like,
He's the nicest boy, the fresh
yeah,
face,
like
the
he doesn't
beard,
have
the
the
sweet.
thing, but he's the most friendly face we can sort of
Yeah,
present to them.
he's
And
the
if you look at,
marketable product.
he's the marketable candidate. That's the word. He's the marketable candidate. Yes, because if you think about
Ah,
it,
hey, this is
performance in
ridiculous.
Copa America, it was poor. It
Very
was the
shambolic.
whole Brazilian team was shambolic. Like
Like,
if you can't have that performance and be in Ballon d'Or conversation, I'm sorry.
and even if you
And
look at the Real Madrid season, up until the latter ends of the season, Vinny was missing. It was
yeah,
Bellingham show up until the latter ends, then Vinny stepped in
yeah,
and had some clutch moments. And I'm like, why is
he,
this
he,
guy the one getting the biggest shout?
he, he did well, like especially in the crucial stages.
Yeah,
He popped up for them. If that's what gives you the Ballon d'Or, that's fine. But not in Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo's world. What's 26 goals doing?
bro,
No, but
and
I
12
mean,
assists.
I'm also the same person who wants to move away from this. But when we are talking about the Ballon d'Or this season, people when it comes to Vinicius Jr., people immediately want to use numbers. And when you
Yeah,
compare his numbers to other guys and say he doesn't, like Lautaro Martinez has more numbers, they say it's where he did it. They say it's about the moments. They say it's
and how
about,
it made us feel.
yes, like they keep shifting
The
the
goalpost
right.
challenge.
Me, it just tells me that it really is about who
It's just the
Real Madrid.
media, the narratives that have sold, and Real Madrid is also part. Like, I mean,
Yes,
the
it's a Real
spotlight
Madrid
and the
factor.
performances at Real Madrid is always.
See,
Um,
all of the things he did this season, if he had done the same thing in Chelsea
he
or in
wouldn't go anywhere.
yeah, or in I
He
don't.
wouldn't go
I'm even
anywhere.
trying to use the big clubs who just don't have the
Like
hype.
someone scored 57 goals. Oh.
Like Haaland, for me, this is it. The Haaland should be in a conversation, like Champions
Exactly.
League, Premier League,
But I mean,
and Premier League.
obviously, he's everyone's. If you ask everyone, he's their pick for the Ballon d'Or. There are a few people who are defiant, but for majority of people, Vinicius
Me
Jr. is
too.
their pick. And and I'm going to ask you now. Take a minute if you have to. But for these six players, Kane, Martinez, Carvajal, Bellingham, Rodri, and Vinny, rank them from sixth to first on your Ballon d'Or rankings. After the rankings officially are out, we'll come and react and compare the official rankings to your rankings. I would also do mine, but yeah, let me
So,
know.
do you want mine or do you want a prediction? Because I don't think a prediction is valuable.
No, no, I want yours. I want your ranking. We'll just eventually come and look at the deviation, the margins of deviation from the actual rankings that come out. But anyway,
Okay, cool. I think Rodri should win it. I think Rodri,
okay.
or you want me to start from six so that it builds suspense?
You've
No,
already
but
said Rodri should win it, but let's go down.
no, I think Rodri should win it. And even coming into this call, I wasn't quite sure, but
Yeah.
I think Rodri should win it. Like if this the narrative, then we should just go for it. Rodri should win it. But I think Vini probably deserves to come in second. Vini probably deserves to come in second, and I think I'll put Carvajal at third. Then I'll put Lautaro at fourth. Then I put Bellingham at fifth. Then I put Harry Kane at sixth.
So Kane, Bellingham, Lautaro.
I want to change my number one. My number one is Anthony. I've forgotten that he was part of the list. I want to change. Tell the producer to edit this part. Tell the producer to edit this part so that I can change.
Someone would tell you, even if they did a top 900 Ballon d'Or list, and he will not be on it because he's not recognized as a professional football player. So, interesting list. I mean, if you would ask me, mine is Lautaro in first, because I think for all the performances that he's put in, I think like people would say, oh yeah, the media and all that. But if you would ask me, judging it as an individual award, Lautaro Martinez should definitely, because he stands out as the best in terms of impacting the teams all the way through the competitions that he's won. For Rodri, you can say, yeah, maybe the Spanish team, his absence was not felt. I think if Lautaro exited that Argentinian team, some of the goals that he came up with to get them the result wouldn't be there. And for me, that's the biggest influence. And I would go for Rodri in second. I would go for Vini in third. I would go for Carvajal in fourth. Basically, your entire rankings, I'm just putting Lautaro first. Carvajal, then Bellingham, then Kane. So that's my ranking. Kane in sixth, Bellingham in fifth, Carvajal in fourth, Vini in third, Rodri in second, and Lautaro Martinez in first. And so that compares to Erasmus, who has Rodri in first, Vini in second, Carvajal in third, Lautaro in fourth, Bellingham in fifth, and Harry Kane in sixth. This has been an interesting reaction and an interesting conversation on the Shaft podcast and the Beer Parlour. Yeah, this has been fun. It's really been fun breaking down the Ballon d'Or nominees and picking our top ranking players. I mean, the ceremony is upcoming. It's on Monday. Definitely, if you are watching this episode, go watch the ceremony. We'll be back after the rankings are out, and we'll come and make noise about how the football people are using media and propaganda to sell players and give the awards to people who don't deserve it, like Vinicius Jr. But I mean, if you gave me the powers to select
what will be funny? What will be funny is if Rodri actually wins it, because I've not been a lot of big Rodri fans.
Yeah,
this is the only channel where I've seen both of us call Rodri.
That's actually true. That's actually true. And it's like, let's see what happens. It's been a really exciting episode as well. Thank you for joining us, for listening on the Beer Parlour. Now, while you listen to this, you can let us know your reactions and your thoughts on this discussion, and eventually even who wins. We're going to have a reaction episode on this, so you can send your thoughts either via text, via a voice recorded message to our email on theshaft123@gmail.com, theshaftpodcast123@gmail.com. We'll definitely play some of them on the subsequent reactions just to see your thoughts. You can leave your comments as well, and we'll read out the comments if you give us some thought-provoking ones to think about. So leave your likes, leave your subscription notes, click on the bell, get notified anytime we release an episode, and you'd always come here to meet some amazing content. So thanks guys for joining us on this episode, and see you on the next one.